The hum of the airplane engines filled the cabin as passengers settled into their seats, some flipping through magazines, others scrolling on their phones. Flight 427, a routine red-eye from New York to Los Angeles, was cruising smoothly at $35,000 feet. Among the flight attendants moving gracefully down the narrow aisles was Maya Johnson, a seasoned professional known for her warm smile and calm presence. With years of experience under her belt, Maya had seen it all: spilled drinks, unruly passengers, even a few marriage proposals, but nothing could have prepared her for what was about to happen. Maya had just started her second round with the beverage cart when she heard a sharp gasp followed by a panicked scream. Her head snapped toward the source of the commotion. Row 12. A young woman, visibly pregnant, was clutching her stomach, her face pale and streaked with tears. Passengers nearby turned in alarm, unsure of what to do. The woman's breathing came in shallow bursts, and she let out another cry that echoed through the cabin. Without hesitation, Maya pushed the beverage cart aside and rushed to the woman's side. "Ma'am, are you okay? Can you tell me what's wrong?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. The woman, who introduced herself as Sarah Collins, managed to choke out, My water broke." Her words sent a ripple of shock through the surrounding passengers. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She glanced around the cabin, assessing the situation. There were still hours left in the flight, and they were miles away from the nearest airport. Diverting the plane or arranging an emergency landing wasn't going to be quick enough. Maya's mind raced. She had basic medical training as part of her job, but this was far beyond anything she'd ever encountered. Still, she knew she couldn't panic. Not now. Not when so much depended on her keeping a level head. Taking a deep breath, she knelt beside Sarah and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're going to get through this together, okay? Just focus on your breathing." As Maya spoke, she pressed the intercom button on the wall and alerted the captain. "We have a medical emergency in row 12, she said, her tone steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I need everyone's cooperation." Over the loudspeaker, the captain's voice crackled, instructing passengers to remain calm and offering assistance if needed. Meanwhile, Maya grabbed the onboard medical kit and began preparing for the unthinkable, delivering a baby mid-flight. Passengers craned their necks to see what was happening, curiosity mixing with concern. Some whispered prayers, while others offered silent support. One elderly woman seated nearby leaned forward anxiously. "Is there anything I can do to help?" she asked softly. Maya appreciated the gesture but shook her head gently. "Just stay calm and give us space," she replied. "We've got this." Despite her outward composure, Maya's mind was racing. She remembered snippets from her days as a nursing student, particularly her time assisting in the maternity ward. It had been years since she'd worked in healthcare, but those lessons came flooding back now. She checked Sarah's condition, noting the frequency of her contractions and the dilation. Time was running out. There was no doctor on board, and the closest medical professional was likely hundreds of miles away. If anyone was going to deliver this baby, it would have to be her. Sarah gripped the armrest tightly, her knuckles white. "I didn't think it would happen like this," she whimpered between contractions. "I was supposed to make it home first." Maya nodded sympathetically. "You're stronger than you think," she encouraged, "and we're all here with you." Her words seemed to calm Sarah slightly, though the fear in her eyes remained undeniable. As the reality of the situation sank in, the mood in the cabin shifted. What had started as a typical overnight flight had transformed into something extraordinary. Strangers exchanged worried glances, their earlier indifference replaced by genuine concern. A middle-aged man in a business suit stood up and offered his jacket to create a makeshift curtain for privacy. Another passenger handed over a clean blanket from the overhead compartment. Slowly but surely, the entire cabin rallied together, united by the shared goal of helping Sarah bring new life into the world. Maya took a moment to center herself. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was a responsibility, a test of everything she'd learned and experienced. She locked eyes with Sarah, offering a reassuring smile. "We're going to do this step by step," she said firmly. You're not alone. And with that, Maya rolled up her sleeves, ready to face whatever came next. Little did she know, the events unfolding in row 12 would change not only Sarah's life, but also the lives of everyone on board. The cabin was eerily quiet now, save for the occasional hum of the airplane engines and the soft murmur of passengers whispering to one another. All eyes were fixed on row 12, where Maya knelt beside Sarah, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. The makeshift curtain of jackets hung loosely between the seats, offering a semblance of privacy, but everyone could feel the tension in the air. It wasn't just Sarah's life hanging in the balance. It was the life of an unborn child too. Maya glanced at the medical kit in front of her, mentally cataloging its contents. There were gloves, scissors, gauze, and basic antiseptics, tools that seemed woefully inadequate for the task at hand. But she reminded herself that she had something far more important: her training, her instincts, and the unwavering support of the passengers around her. She slipped on a pair of latex gloves, took a deep breath, and turned her full attention back to Sarah. "Okay, Sarah," Maya said gently, her voice cutting through the nervous energy like a beacon of calm. "I need you to focus on your breathing. Inhale deeply through your nose, hold it for a second, and then exhale slowly through your mouth." Sarah nodded weakly, clutching the armrests as another contraction hit. Her face contorted with pain, and a small whimper escaped her lips. Maya placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're doing great, just keep going." As the minutes ticked by, the contractions grew stronger and closer together. Maya coached Sarah through each wave of pain, encouraging her to push when the time came. Passengers leaned forward in their seats, their faces etched with concern and anticipation. A young woman seated nearby dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, while an older gentleman muttered prayers under his breath. Even the flight attendants who weren't directly involved had stopped what they were doing, standing silently in solidarity. At one point, Sarah let out a cry of frustration. "I can't do this," she gasped, tears streaming down her cheeks. Maya leaned closer, her expression firm yet kind. "Yes, you can," she insisted. "You're stronger than you think. Every push is bringing your baby closer to meeting. You..." Her words seemed to reignite something within Sarah, who nodded resolutely and pushed again, gritting her teeth against the pain. It was a team effort now. When Maya called out for more towels, a passenger quickly handed over a stack from the bathroom. Someone else offered a bottle of water to keep Sarah hydrated. Even the pilot chimed in over the intercom, reminding everyone to stay calm and assuring them that help would be waiting on the ground when they landed. The collective support of the cabin created an atmosphere of unity, a shared determination to see this through no matter what. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was actually less than 45 minutes, a tiny, high-pitched cry pierced the silence. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then the entire cabin erupted into cheers and applause. Maya carefully wrapped the newborn in a clean airline blanket, marveling at the miracle she held in her arms. "It's a girl," she announced, her voice trembling with emotion. Sarah collapsed against the seat, utterly exhausted but glowing with relief and joy. As Maya handed the baby to her mother, the two women locked eyes, sharing a silent understanding of what they had just accomplished. Together, Sarah cradled her daughter close, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "Hi, sweetheart, I'm your mommy." The sight brought fresh waves of emotion from the passengers, many of whom were openly crying now. But amidst the celebration, questions lingered in the air. Who was the father? Why hadn't he been there to share this incredible moment? Some passengers exchanged curious glances, wondering if Sarah would reveal anything about him. Others simply basked in the magic of the moment, grateful to have witnessed such a rare and beautiful event. Maya stepped back, allowing Sarah a moment of privacy with her newborn. She removed her gloves and wiped her brow, only now realizing how tightly her own nerves had been wound throughout the ordeal. A few passengers approached her, thanking her profusely for her bravery and quick thinking. One man even shook her hand, calling her a hero. Maya smiled modestly, deflecting the praise. "I just did what anyone would have done," she said softly, but deep down she knew this experience would stay with her forever. As the initial excitement began to settle, the reality of the situation started to sink in. Delivering a baby mid-flight was nothing short of extraordinary, but it also raised practical concerns. What would happen once they landed? Would paramedics be ready to assist? And perhaps most importantly, how would Sarah manage as a single mother if the father wasn't present? These thoughts swirled in Maya's mind as she returned to her duties, checking on other passengers and ensuring everything remained calm. Yet she couldn't shake the image of Sarah holding her baby, the look of pure love and wonder on her face. It was a reminder of how fragile and precious life truly was, and how sometimes the most unexpected moments could bring people together in ways they never imagined. For the rest of the flight, the mood in the cabin remained electric. Strangers introduced themselves to one another, sharing stories and laughter as if they'd known each other for years. The birth of Sarah's baby had transformed the plane into a tight-knit community, united by a shared experience that none of them would ever forget. And though the journey wasn't over yet, everyone knew they had already witnessed something truly unforgettable. As the initial excitement of the baby's birth began to settle, the cabin shifted into a quieter, more reflective mood. Passengers were still buzzing with awe, but the reality of the situation started to sink in for Sarah. She sat cradling her newborn, her face glowing with exhaustion and joy, yet tinged with a hint of sadness that no one could quite place, until someone finally asked the question on everyone's mind. "Where's the father?" A middle-aged woman seated nearby ventured softly, breaking the silence. Her tone was gentle, curious rather than intrusive, but it hung in the air like a delicate thread. Sarah hesitated, her eyes dropping to the tiny bundle in her arms. For a moment, she seemed lost in thought, as if deciding how much to share. Then, with a deep breath, she began to speak. "He's not here," Sarah admitted quietly, her voice trembling. "His name is Daniel, and he's serving overseas in the military." The words sent a ripple through the cabin, and the passengers exchanged glances, their curiosity turning to sympathy. Sarah continued, her voice cracking slightly as she recounted her story. "We've been married for 3 years, but his deployment kept us apart for most of my pregnancy. I wanted to tell him in person, I wanted him to be here, but I didn't think she'd come so early." Her confession struck a chord with everyone on board. The sacrifices of military families were well known, but hearing Sarah's personal struggle brought it sharply into focus. Many of the passengers nodded knowingly, some reaching out to pat her shoulder or offer quiet words of encouragement. Maya, who had resumed tidying up after the delivery, paused to listen, her heart aching for the young mother. Sarah went on to explain how difficult the past few months had been. Without Daniel by her side, she'd relied heavily on her sister and close friends for support. But even then, there were moments when loneliness overwhelmed her. The late-night cravings, the endless doctor's appointments, the sleepless nights filled with worry about the future. "I just wanted him to know before anyone else," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. But life had other plans. The revelation left the cabin in stunned silence. It was one thing to witness the miracle of a baby being born mid-flight. It was another entirely to realize the depth of Sarah's strength and resilience. Here was a woman who had faced uncertainty, fear, and isolation, and yet she had carried her child safely into the world, surrounded by strangers who had become an impromptu family. Maya knelt beside Sarah again, offering a comforting hand. "You're incredible, Sarah," she said sincerely. "What you've done today is nothing short of heroic, and wherever Daniel is, I'm sure he's proud of you." Sarah managed a small smile, though her eyes betrayed the weight of her emotions. "Thank you," she whispered. "I couldn't have done it without all of you." Meanwhile, the pilot announced over the intercom that they would soon begin their descent into Los Angeles. The news prompted a flurry of activity as passengers prepared for landing, but the atmosphere remained charged with emotion. Strangers exchanged hugs and phone numbers, promising to stay in touch after the flight. Others approached Sarah to congratulate her once more, showering her with kind words and heartfelt wishes for the future. As the plane descended through the clouds, the city lights of Los Angeles twinkling below, Maya found herself reflecting on everything that had transpired. She thought about the courage it must have taken for Sarah to travel alone while pregnant, knowing full well the risks involved. She thought about Daniel, thousands of miles away, unaware of the miracle that had occurred high above the Pacific Ocean. And she thought about the power of human connection, the way complete strangers had come together to support one another in a time of need. When the wheels touched down on the runway, a wave of applause swept through the cabin. It wasn't just for the safe landing. It was for the journey they had shared, the lives they had touched, and the bond they had formed. As the plane taxied to the gate, paramedics boarded to check on Sarah and the baby, ensuring both were stable before disembarking. The process was efficient but unhurried, giving the passengers one last chance to bid farewell to the new mother and her daughter. Sarah stood at the front of the plane, holding her baby close as passengers filed past. Some stopped to hug her, others simply smiled and waved. But every single person made a point to acknowledge the incredible role she had played in their unforgettable night. Maya lingered until the very end, helping Sarah gather her belongings and making sure she had everything she needed for the next leg of her journey. "You'll be okay," Maya assured her, giving her arm a gentle squeeze. "And remember, you're never alone. We're all rooting for you." Sarah nodded, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she said again, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I would have done without you." With that, Sarah stepped off the plane and into the bustling terminal, where medical staff waited to escort her to the hospital for further care. Behind her, the remaining passengers dispersed, each carrying a piece of the extraordinary experience with them. They hugged loved ones waiting at baggage claim, called friends to recount the story, or simply sat quietly, processing everything they had witnessed. For Maya, the day was far from over. There were reports to file, debriefings to attend, and countless questions from reporters eager to document the miracle mid-flight. Yet as she walked back to the crew lounge, she couldn't help but feel a profound sense of fulfillment. In a world often marked by division and chaos, she had seen firsthand the goodness that existed within people, their willingness to step up, to care, and to make a difference when it mattered most. And though the events of Flight 427 would soon fade into memory for many, Maya knew they would always hold a special place in her heart. Because sometimes life has a way of reminding us that even in the most unexpected places, miracles can happen, and love, in all its forms, finds a way to shine through. The bustling terminal at Los Angeles International Airport was alive with the usual chaos: rolling suitcases, hurried footsteps, and the hum of announcements echoing through the cavernous space. But amidst the commotion, one corner stood out. A crowd had gathered near Gate 27, where paramedics were tending to Sarah and her newborn baby. Reporters jostled for position, their cameras flashing as they tried to capture every detail of the extraordinary story that had unfolded aboard Flight 427. Passengers who had disembarked moments earlier lingered nearby, unwilling to leave just yet, still caught up in the whirlwind of emotions from the flight. Amidst the organized chaos, a tall figure in military fatigues pushed his way through the throng of people. His boots clicked sharply against the tiled floor, drawing curious glances from those around him. He moved with purpose, his eyes scanning the area frantically until they landed on Sarah. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. The man stopped in his tracks, his face a mixture of disbelief, shock, and overwhelming emotion. In his hands he clutched a bouquet of flowers, bright yellow daisies wrapped in simple brown paper, as if he'd been planning something entirely different when fate intervened. "Sarah?" he called out, his voice cracking slightly. She turned, toward the sound, her eyes widening as she recognized the familiar face. It was Daniel, her husband, the man she had longed to see for months. Tears sprang to her eyes as she took a hesitant step forward, clutching her baby tightly against her chest. "Daniel?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Without another word, Daniel dropped the flowers and rushed to her side, enveloping her in a tight embrace. The bouquet fell to the ground, forgotten as he held her close, his body shaking with sobs. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there," he choked out, his words barely audible over the din of the terminal. "I should have been here. I should have—" Sarah cut him off, placing a finger gently on his lips. "You're here now," she said softly, her own tears streaming down her cheeks. "That's all that matters." She shifted the baby slightly, angling her so Daniel could get a better look. "Meet your daughter." For a moment, Daniel couldn't speak. His gaze dropped to the tiny bundle in Sarah's arms, and his breath caught in his throat. The baby blinked up at him with wide, innocent eyes, completely unaware of the storm of emotions swirling around her. Slowly, reverently, Daniel reached out to touch her tiny hand. Her fingers curled instinctively around his thumb, and he let out a strangled laugh that sounded more like a sob. She's perfect," he managed to say, his voice thick with awe. The scene was almost too much for the onlookers to bear. Strangers wiped away tears while others snapped photos or recorded videos, capturing the raw humanity of the moment. Even the paramedics paused briefly, giving the family a respectful distance as they processed the reunion. Maya, who had stayed behind to ensure Sarah's transition to medical care went smoothly, watched from a few feet away, her heart swelling with emotion. This was the kind of moment that made everything worth it, the kind of love and connection that reminded her why she did what she did. As Daniel continued to marvel at his newborn daughter, Sarah filled him in on the events of the flight. She recounted how the baby had arrived unexpectedly, mid-air, with no doctor on board, and only the help of a brave flight attendant and a cabin full of supportive strangers. Daniel listened intently, his expression shifting between disbelief, gratitude, and sheer amazement. When she mentioned Maya by name, he turned to look at her, his eyes brimming with appreciation. "Thank you," he said earnestly, "for everything. If it weren't for you—" Maya shook her head modestly, waving off his thanks. "It was a team effort," she replied, gesturing toward the passengers who were still milling about, reluctant to leave. "We were all in it together." Her humility only deepened Daniel's admiration, and he nodded solemnly, knowing he owed these strangers a debt he could never fully repay. With the immediate shock of the reunion subsiding, the focus shifted to getting Sarah and the baby settled. Paramedics guided them toward a waiting ambulance, ensuring they received proper medical attention. Daniel stayed glued to Sarah's side, his arm protectively around her shoulders as they walked. Every so often, he glanced down at the baby, his face lighting up with wonder each time she made the slightest movement. It was clear that despite missing her birth, Daniel was determined to be the best father he could be from this point forward. Before climbing into the ambulance, Sarah turned to thank the passengers one last time. Many of them had stuck around, unwilling to leave until they knew she and the baby were safe. One elderly woman handed her a folded piece of paper with her phone number written on it. "Call me anytime," she urged. "If you need anything, a babysitter, advice, or just someone to talk to, I'm here." Others echoed similar sentiments, exchanging hugs and well wishes before finally dispersing. Back inside the terminal, the energy began to shift. The reporters packed up their equipment, satisfied with the footage they had captured. Ground staff resumed their duties, and travelers hurried to catch connecting flights. But the impact of what had happened lingered in the air, a reminder of the extraordinary capacity for kindness and resilience that existed within ordinary people. For Daniel, the day marked the beginning of a new chapter. Though he had missed the birth of his child, he was determined to make up for lost time. As the ambulance pulled away from the curb, sirens wailing softly in the background, he leaned back against the seat, cradling his daughter in his arms. Sarah rested her head on his shoulder, exhausted but content. Together they formed a picture of hope and unity, a testament to the strength of family and the power of love to transcend even the greatest challenges. Meanwhile, Maya returned to her routine, filing reports and preparing for her next assignment. Yet part of her remained tethered to the events of Flight 427. She thought about Sarah and Daniel often, wondering how they were adjusting to their new reality. She also reflected on the passengers she had met, the ones who had offered jackets, towels, and prayers during the delivery. Each of them had played a role in creating something truly unforgettable. Though life would eventually return to normal for everyone involved, the memory of that night would remain etched in their hearts forever. It was a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected moments bring out the best in us, that even in the skies, thousands of miles above the earth, humanity has a way of shining brightest when it matters most. And for Maya, Daniel, Sarah, and everyone else aboard Flight 427, that truth was undeniable. In the days that followed, the story of Flight 427 continued to spread like wildfire. News outlets across the country picked up the tale, dubbing it the miracle mid-flight. Social media buzzed with photos and videos from the passengers, each sharing their unique perspective on the unforgettable journey. Reporters clamored for interviews with Sarah, Daniel, and especially Maya, the flight attendant whose quick thinking and calm under pressure had saved the day. But while the attention brought fame and admiration, what mattered most to everyone involved was the deeper connection they had forged during those hours in the sky. For Sarah and Daniel, life became a whirlwind of adjustments and joy. After spending a night in the hospital to ensure both mother and baby were healthy, they returned to their small apartment in Los Angeles. The transition wasn't easy, newborns rarely are, but they faced every challenge together, their bond stronger than ever. Daniel marveled at how quickly he fell into the rhythm of fatherhood, changing diapers, soothing late-night cries, and marveling at every tiny milestone. He often found himself gazing at his daughter, still unable to believe she existed. "Emily," he whispered one evening as he rocked her to sleep, using the name Sarah had chosen in honor of Maya's late grandmother. "You're our little miracle." Sarah, too, felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for Emily's safe arrival, but for the outpouring of support they had received from strangers turned friends. In the weeks after the flight, she stayed in touch with many of the passengers who had been there that night. A group chat titled Miracle Mid-Flight became a virtual gathering place where everyone shared updates, photos, and memories. One passenger sent a care package filled with handmade blankets and toys for Emily, while another mailed a heartfelt letter congratulating the new parents. These gestures reminded Sarah that even in moments of vulnerability, humanity could shine through in beautiful ways. Meanwhile, Maya found herself reflecting on the experience in quiet moments between flights. Though she had always taken pride in her work, delivering a baby mid-air had given her a renewed sense of purpose. Passengers on subsequent flights recognized her from news reports, stopping to thank her or ask for selfies. While she appreciated the recognition, Maya remained humble, insisting that she had simply done her job. "It wasn't about me," she told anyone who asked. "It was about all of us coming together to help someone in need." Her humility only endeared her further to the public. Airlines featured her story in promotional materials, highlighting her professionalism and compassion. Colleagues nicknamed her the Miracle Maker, teasing her good-naturedly whenever she walked past. Despite the accolades, Maya stayed grounded, focusing on the relationships she had built rather than the spotlight she had inadvertently stepped into. She exchanged letters with Sarah, offering words of encouragement and delighting in photos of Emily growing bigger by the day. One afternoon, Maya received an unexpected package in the mail. Inside was a framed photo of Sarah, Daniel, and Emily, along with a handwritten note. "Thank you for being our guardian angel," Sarah wrote. "We'll never forget what you did for us, and neither will Emily when she's old enough to understand." Touched beyond words, Maya placed the photo on her bedside table, where it served as a daily reminder of the impact one person can have on another's life. As months passed, the passengers from Flight 427 formed an unlikely community. What had started as a group chat evolved into something more meaningful, a network of support and friendship. They organized meetups whenever schedules allowed, reuniting over coffee or dinner to relive the magic of that night. At one such gathering, the elderly woman who had offered her jacket for privacy pulled Maya aside. "You know," she said with a warm smile, I've flown hundreds of times, but I've never felt closer to my fellow travelers than I did on that flight. It changed me. Maya nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. That night had been transformative for everyone involved, not because of the rarity of the event, but because of the way it had brought people together. Strangers had become family, united by a shared goal and a collective act of kindness. It was a lesson Maya carried with her wherever she went, a reminder that no matter how chaotic or impersonal the world might seem, human connection could bridge even the widest gaps. For Daniel, the experience deepened his appreciation for the sacrifices military families make, and for the strength of his own wife. He vowed to be present for every possible moment moving forward, whether it was waking up in the middle of the night to feed Emily or taking Sarah out for a rare date night. Their love story, marked by distance and hardship, had emerged stronger than ever, proving that true partnership could withstand anything. And then there was Emily, the tiny thread that had woven them all together. As she grew, so did the legend of her birth. Family members joked that she would one day write a book about it, while friends teased that she'd have quite the story to tell at school. For now, though, she was content to giggle and coo, blissfully unaware of the lives she had touched before she'd even drawn her first breath. Years later, when Emily was old enough to ask questions, Sarah and Daniel sat her down to share the story of her extraordinary entrance into the world. They showed her pictures of the flight, introduced her to Maya via video call, and read aloud messages from the passengers who had cheered her arrival. Emily listened wide-eyed, her imagination sparked by the idea that she had once been the center of such an incredible adventure. "Do you think I'll ever do something amazing like that?" she asked innocently, her voice filled with wonder. Sarah smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "You already have," she replied. "Just by being born, you reminded everyone around you how special life is." In the use here, and the legacy of Flight 427 wasn't about headlines or social media posts. It was about the enduring power of human connection. It was about strangers becoming friends, individuals discovering their own strength, and families finding hope in the most unexpected places. And though the plane itself had landed long ago, its impact continued to soar, touching hearts and inspiring acts of kindness far beyond the confines of the cabin.